Welcome, everybody, to a special episode of Sang Lucci TV. We are joined here by Haim Bodek, which you can see at the Sang Lucci offices out in New York City. Haim, say what's up to everybody, man.
I'll give you my my metalhead sign there.
Okay, exactly. So most people know Haim as the HFT whistleblower, right? They read about him in the news. They see him on CNBC. And all these documentaries and such about, sort of speaking against some practices in HFT. But I wanted to bring to everybody, Haim the regular guy, man. Haim the regular guy who loves his metal, man, who loves his metal. Yeah. And what else does he? And what else?
Around you guys, I am the regular guy.
You know what? That's true. That is true.
Yeah, you know it.
So, and that leads me actually to my first segment here. I want to know, like, what you thought about us the first time that you came to the loft. So everybody here listening, like, we learned about Haim from reading the book Dark Pools, right? We read the book Dark Pools, and I was so amazed finally with the content in the book that we were like, okay, we have to find this individual here. So we found you on Twitter. We called you up. Peter called you up and said, yo, just come over to the place and let's just talk shop. Maybe we can do some business here. So what did you think about that first interaction with us sitting there at the dining room table in the loft?
I mean, there's a couple thoughts around then that were, and I don't know the sequence, right? One of them was like, I probably should be talking to traders,
right?
Because my industry is you guys were natural, naturally we were natural allies, right? The day trader, the active trader, hedge fund guy, that whole culture, which in the black box world we're kind of cut off from.
Right.
Right. You're basically on the losing end of that equation. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm getting, excuse me, my language here, but I'm getting the shit kicked out of me. When I met you, I was in the middle of it, and
that's what a lot of people don't know. And I'm happy that you're open about it now. You know what I mean? Like, we caught you at a certain place in your life where you were open to having that interaction with us, with people that, let's face it, you wouldn't really have that kind of interaction with us, if it wasn't for the circumstances that you were in with trading machines, and everything that happened to you.
Well, I can say getting out of the, I used to call the ivory tower.
Yeah.
Oh wow! Once you get out, and it's just an amazing experience of how the lack of reality in it.
Okay. Okay.
You know what I mean? So just the way markets work. But I want to tell you about one other thing before you get into like the call it that elitism, which is part of the what you're kind of getting at. The other thing that I thought was, and I'll tell this story a number of times, right? Okay, I worked for like 5 years at a major investment bank, working on a particular problem. Okay, and the problem was we were quoting very, very large size. We're talking about like 20,000 up in the queues, and we were doing that, bid and offer 20,000 up.
Right.
And we were doing that so we could get a bigger piece of the next 10 lot that came in.
Right.
Okay, which is completely crazy. And there was, and it's not just crazy. It was all, quite dangerous. Night Derivatives, acquired by Citi, had a huge electronic trading error.
Yeah.
When they accidentally stepped on the market with all those quotes that size, and kaboom! And I'm surprised that I can't even find the press on it, but it was reported in the press back then. It was a major event. Yeah. So. And we're all doing this to like pick up the pennies, and every now and then there was like a big trade would come in, and there's nothing I could do. They had labeled with 1,000 contracts, 500 contracts, and that was big, right?
Right.
And what we had is very sophisticated logic to try to get the hell out of that thing,
right?
And we're thinking that the other side of that trade is sophisticated. Flow desk at another bank. Right. And I walk in and look at you trade, and you're just clobbering. You're the other side of that stupid experience. It's such a fraction of the money in the account versus your counterparty.
Absolutely.
And I'm just like watching, and I realized that you know, and I told you that from the beginning, that the idea, you know, there's so much ego
Yes.
in my world, but the risk tolerance is like nothing.
Is nothing. Is
That's
nothing.
part of, you know, you work at a major investment bank, you have all this, you know, capital at your disposal.
Right.
Okay, you have all this influence over the exchanges. Now, you know, as we said, I went to special order types. You get all this edge.
Right. Right.
Right.
And then
you can't even hold the other side of that trade.
Then you see me running people.
You're running, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, and then I the other side, you know, the ivory tower kind of world is like, oh, you know, they're just punters, or their alpha is just the fact that they did that big trade.
Right.
Well, I'm like, yeah, if you piss your pants in collective force, if the other side just runs away from every trade, which is, you know, what kind of, you can think of your flash crashy markets.
Right.
You know, so at one point in time, I was like, you know what? Maybe Lucci is liquidity in this name. Yeah. What are the market makers, right? They're just trying to flip nothing, scalp out of a, you know, and it just, the whole experience made me wonder more and more about, you know, had my industry just kind of, you know, gone to a place where we didn't even know what it was to participate in the process of price discovery.
Nice. Nice.
Right?
That actually brings me to my point that I wanted to make, is that you saw in me that small percentage of trades, that sort of transference of risk, right, from these guys in these ivory towers who control most of the show, but there's this little pocket, you know, where they get pitched this trade that they don't want and they're scrambling to get out of it, right? Those are guys like me. And I took from you so much about market structure, so much about how those ATS systems work, the dark pools work, how market makers move spreads, you know, whether it's penny spreads or if it's a wide spread. I learned so much just from hanging around you and hearing some of the language that comes out of your mouth. You know, and it was kind of like a cool marriage of the two. You know, some folks from my world. And then you kind of came along and really juiced everything up and kind of gave this sort of legitimacy here, you know, to what we were doing. So I'm sure there was many times though where you questioned, like, what am I doing here? What am I doing? I belong here in this ivory tower, right? And you know, I'm not going to go back there. So I got to find something else here. I got to find something else. I mean, how did you cope with that mentally? That's one of the things I wanted to know.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about the experience was it was completely crazy to me.
Yeah.
How much direct one-on-one interaction and vindication I had with my industry. Okay. Right. I could go out to lunch with anybody. I had doors open in places that were never been open to me before.
Right.
And I had people telling me to my face, you know, very senior people who should be on the other side of the debate, telling me I'm right. But at the same time, it was amazing how the lack of opportunity. I never had so many open doors and so little opportunity back in 2013. It was amazing. I was like, how is this possible?
Right.
You know, and I was thinking to myself, you know, there's hundreds of people who could have opened up, you know, maybe not everything I've contributed, but you know, there's so many people. Right,
in so many different parts of the world or parts of the industry. There's so many people that you could have paired up with, right? That you could have ended up doing business with.
Yeah. Now, what I'm looking at is this goes on, and it's going on. You know, and that was, we can keep in mind, I've been in this market reform function for 3.5 years. And I'm like, certainly there's got to be someone else out there who's going to pick up the torch on this, an insider. Okay? And then, you know, we have allies, and you've had some on your show, and there's other people out there. But like, you know, like how many order type articles did I write? You know, without even getting into all the goods. It's like, I'm like, you know, you get put into this position where you're like, okay, I'm right. I know I'm right. I can't go into all the details, but it was like, you know, what I try to tell people is that Scott Patterson wouldn't have featured me as such a major part of his book
Right.
if he didn't have already like direct confirmation of the truth
Right.
called my contribution. I'll use a soft word there. Okay, so which got now it's been I'm vindicated a couple of weeks ago officially.
Right, this was a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, and we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. I want to talk, what's been going on, obviously, as far as your contribution to the market structure sort of reform world here. But again, like I still want to make sure everybody knows, like the man underneath it all. Like we all read the the articles in the Wall Street Journal. We read the Bloomberg and all that kind of stuff. All credit here to Haim for this order type debate that he brought up, 4 years ago.
All right. So I'll basically say it. There's no way I should have ever gotten to this point, and I realize that now.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
I realize that now. I thought, oh, okay, these guys are doing this really bad stuff, and they know it, and they're talking to me about it over dinner.
Right.
Right? How can it be so blatant in your face and go on that long and be that in such a cynical industry?
Right.
We are such a cynical industry. I love these Twitter conversations because I'm like, I know, you're talking about like making markets better and all this on Twitter, and I know what you're going to tell me over dinner if we have dinner.
Right.
But,
right. Exactly. They'll come out on Twitter and say this one thing, but you know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah. And the truth is, a lot of people in my industry hate many of the practices just as much as I do.
Right. But it's a game.
I guess what's different about me is I was the stupid guy who decided to attack them publicly without having $500 million in the bank. Unlike some other great market reformers out there had a good cushion.
Right.
We really went that way.
Do you think that's why it took so long for you to? Because I remember there was a dead space in time where you were doing a lot of this market structure reform. We were trying to help you to get there as well, but there was just this dead space. Nobody wanted to listen to it. Nobody wanted to pay attention. Even on the major news wires and everything. And then all of a sudden, what was the spark? Was it Flash Boys? Was it Flash Boys?
Yeah, the thing about this is, we'll see. Going back, it's very, very clear that the regulators were going to pursue those cases. There's no doubt they were going to pursue it. But what was interesting about the whole thing is that the industry, the silence you're talking about is actually the industry. Right? The regulators are actually supposed to be very meticulous and very quiet. Right?
Right.
Industry was going in and out and in and out. And you know what? Why was there such radio silence? Because the liability is off the charts.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Okay? For everybody, not just for the bad guys.
Right.
For everybody. For the clients, for the venues. If you look at it, there's actually no natural winner in this market structure reform.
Right.
So that's why.
Okay.
So when we rattled the cages, as other market reform people did, and frankly, it's not as appreciated. It's not even appreciated. The weird thing for me is I had better relationships with kind of moderate HFTs than I had with mutual funds and banks, who I continue to see as the natural victims of the practices I turned.
Absolutely.
That was perplexing.
We're gonna get into that. Good HFT, kind of bad HFT. I want to know: do you ever just get kind of like exhausted about talking about this stuff? I mean, you've been talking about this stuff for the last 3 or 4 years, right? You finally got some vindication, and we'll talk about that in a second. The whole bat sword deal.
Yeah. I was thinking to myself, okay.
But do you ever just get tired of talking about this shit?
I hated learning it.
Yeah.
I thought it was such a scam. I hated the year in 2011 that I had to go learn what these numbskulls had set up in the stock market. I'm an options guy.
Right.
And I'm like, God, I can't even run a business in options anymore without learning, what really is an elaborate, for me, I call it regulatory arbitrage or whatever, but it's just like, it's just a scam, okay? And I'm like, and I have to learn it. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, when it finally gets outed at the scale, if the regulators act, it'll get shut down, and if the regulators say everything's fine, then this will just be the way I do business or whatever, right?
Right.
I was actually, I actually wasn't really ready for the it's a scam, but we're gonna approve it anyway.
Right. So at this point,
I'm exhausted by it. But guess what? I have a great knowledge base now. I'm like an expert.
Dude, you're an expert. You're
at the thing that I thought it was going to go away, and now it's the way of doing things.
It is the way of doing things. So let me ask you, as in turn here, are you also seeing your speaking engagements and things like that? Are you starting to see mutual funds and people that are the victims? Are they now starting to say, okay, we need somebody like Haim to come by and tell us what the fuck is going on? Are you seeing that pickup in demand there?
Well, it's always been the same thing with my material, actually, right?
Okay.
Really, really elite smart firms get it, and off and on there's stuff there. And then there's the firms that are really upset about this.
Right.
And I kind of find myself doing intros to those firms.
Okay.
So, I work with firms that, with my information, they can solve the problems internally very quickly once they know what's going on.
Right.
And I work with firms that are very upset about it, but I'm still perplexed. There is no demand, real demand, for, call it the middle of the road between those two.
Okay.
And you know why?
You tell me.
Liability.
It's again liability. So we're still not over that hump really in reality world, where it's like, hey, we're getting screwed here on our order flow. We can be saving $200,000, $1 million a year type stuff, but what? We're not going to talk to this person, or we're not going to bring this consultant in because of liability.
I can't tell you how many times I actually had legal departments cancel gigs on me because they were worried.
Yeah.
Knowing these things that have now come out in official actions. I mean,
yes.
The reality here is that everybody should have addressed the issues back. Probably when go back to when Rich Gates in 2010 was outing latency arbitrage. It's been 5 years.
Right.
And nobody's done a thing. And now every major, how many active investigations that are likely to result in enforcement actions are happening now.
We're going to get that. We're going to get that.
Yeah, I know, but I'm trying to say everybody had their head in the stand, and not because they didn't know.
Right.
Because they thought it was riskier to address the issues.
Ain't that some shit, man? Ain't that some shit?
Right? And now the risk is completely concentrated. It's a nightmare. I would hate working at most of these firms.
Right.
I would hate it. Today, it's a terrible time to be.
No kidding.
On the other side of this debate right now.
All right. Let's switch gears here, and we're going to come back to this because there's obviously stuff I want to hit with the current situation at bats and everything. But let's talk Wall Street Code, man. Did you think it would be as successful as it was, man? I mean, it was crazy successful, as far as just raw hits on YouTube, but everybody talking about it in the social media world, market structure world, and everything. Did you think it would be that successful, and do you think it's a good portrayal of what was happening?
Well, I think Miriam did a great job. She's quite compelling.
Yeah.
In her storytelling. By that time, I had already had the dark pools experience. I started to understand a lot more about narrative. Okay. So it wasn't as surprising a result. I thought I was pretty impressed with how she crafted it. She executed it really well.
Definitely. But
the kind of message there made sense to me, right? I wasn't that surprised by that.
Cool.
The thing, a lot of people, I got to get some feedback directly that a number of people, called people who sympathize with me, said that it was really gutsy to show myself where I was at that point. I wasn't in the best place at that time.
But you know what? You know what, Haim? You know what, Haim? We, like me as a trader, and you know me, like I go through some serious ups and downs, right? And we're out there being very transparent and all that kind of stuff. And when you're down, man, people beat the shit out of you, man. People beat the shit out of you. And we were just talking before, everybody, we were just talking before we came on here, and we were talking about, you know, how people change when they interact with you once they know, you know, X, Y, and Z is going on. Oh, this guy's getting his ass kicked, or, you know, this guy's on top of the world here. So, Haim, what are your comments on that? I mean, how are people treating you differently, let's say, you know, than 3 or 4 years ago? You know, can you see the glimmer in their eye, or can you see the, you know, what are they after, you know?
Well, anybody who's been following it probably has an idea that it was just how much willpower it took.
Right.
And matter of fact, I will say, my lawyer is continually emphasized to different authorities out there,
right,
that just because I'm so resilient, you know, doesn't mean people should take their time with this whole process. Right? Like, I guess I think that's why I keep saying I shouldn't have been able to pull it off.
Right, right.
But I did, and I acutely realized that.
So I want to hit on that too, man. You were quoted in Bloomberg News for saying something about the SEC that I found, you know, pretty different, and I know most of the viewers out here will also find that as well. You commended the SEC for their sort of level of sophistication on that particular investigation, whatever it was. I forget what article it was, but they actually quoted you saying SEC was on top of their thing, you know. And so I wanted to ask you, like, what's the whistleblower process like? I mean, is it difficult to just, you know, open things up with the SEC? Are they welcoming? You know, do they even know what the hell is going on? You know, so you must have said that for a reason. So what's going on with the SEC?
You know, at this point, you know, right, I have to look at what happened and how it's done, and say what was my expectations at the beginning, right? The reality is, the reason why this took so long, and you know, we were, my lawyer and I were made aware that this was one of the, or perhaps it was the most technically challenging investigation they've ever done.
Okay, why is that? Why is that? I mean, what is it about this versus, let's say, you know, busting a penny stock guy or friggin', you know, some dumb bullshit?
So when you recognize, and you go read that order, it says that there were 2 HFTs that got all this information.
Right. It was like Group A and Group B or whatever.
Yeah. You know what that order is basically saying? Is that those 2 HFTs ran circles around every major investment bank.
Okay. As far as disclosures, or as far as you know, working these order types or things like that, or what are we talking about?
Yeah, I'm basically saying that the SEC basically confirmed that they understood how these 2 firms extracted edge from all these major elitist institutions that traded on that venue.
I see. Okay.
Right? I'm basically saying right now that there are some, you know, major executing service providers that are way behind the SEC in understanding how these high-frequency predatory, you know, kind of asymmetric environments operate.
Absolutely, but you're saying the SEC understands it and understands it well. You're saying they're very competent when it comes to that situation, correct?
Yeah. I'm you know,
wow.
I'm saying that they know more and are more competent at these details.
Yeah.
The heads of most equity trading desks at major investment banks out there.
Wow, because dude, we see on Twitter all the time where people are yelling at the SEC for how behind they are. And for how much they don't understand how the market works and all that kind of stuff. Because remember, when the flash crash happened, you know, they couldn't come up with solutions and all that kind of stuff. And I know there's a lot behind that, you know, as well. But that's great. That's great. So where are they, I guess, in a position now to move
And this is well, first of all, it's very, very clear that they're going to use that competency, that expertise,
right,
to continue to pursue.
Okay.
Okay, and what's going to happen is they're basically through that, they had two major enforcement actions, UBS and Direct Edge.
Okay.
Every one of these is asserting harm to investors that traded through major institutions.
Right.
Every one of those jacks up the risk that if those institutions that had harmed parties don't get with the program,
right.
You understand these major executing brokers should be telling the regulators what's wrong with these venues, not the opposite.
Not the opposite. Not the opposite. I see.
Right? I'm trying to say they're learning. I mean,
right.
Think about, it's not old news.
Right.
They're actually completely doing their function, correctly when it's, the regulators are. And what are they doing? They're putting the problem back on industry.
Okay. But that's an issue because the industry doesn't want change, correct? The industry still doesn't want anything, any shift from status quo. Am I right?
You cannot have these settlements without having additional lawsuits. It's just,
right.
I mean, that liability fear I talked about earlier.
Right.
It's completely concentrated right now.
All right. For everybody who's just tuning in. And let's say is a little unaware of some of the things that we're talking about. Right now we're talking about the fine for $14 million on the BATS exchange for not providing the proper disclosures for these order types that they rolled out for certain firms here. And that's kind of what we're talking about. And this is again what Haim has been fighting for the last 3 some odd years here. And this also to the whole order type thing was what led to trading machines falling by the wayside and everything. So everybody was just listening.
It took the momentum out of us at just the wrong time, but I don't think it was the thing that killed us.
Cool. All right. So for everybody here, and we have a lot of traders here too. What's the difference between good HFT and bad HFT? And then I want to add on that by asking how automated and sophisticated are market maker algorithms too. So first, like what's an example of good HFT versus bad HFT?
Well, I'll probably start out with my own personal experience because
sure.
I've done both, Lucci. Okay, so I think it was either 99 or 2000 when I was allocated to working on a European electronic trading problem.
Okay.
Which was we were. I won't talk about the firm specifically. You can guess, but the mandate was we were too slow. We were missing the good trades.
Okay.
Okay. And the story is I basically used some work that another person had done and recognized that work could be leveraged to basically get prices faster out of the Eurex API,
okay,
exploiting an unanticipated feature. Basically a loophole, total loophole.
Okay.
Now this feature this will sound crazy to people, but you can go back in time and read about the numbers. The numbers will sound crazy. Back then, Eurex used to send prices every 2 seconds in a batch.
Okay.
That meant there was these gaps of 2 seconds in between the prices hitting the screen.
Okay, right.
Okay, now if the buffer inside Eurex filled up quicker, they would send it out a little bit sooner, like every 700 milliseconds or whatever. So if it was fast, you'd see them every half second, every 700 seconds. But the default was every 2 seconds. I basically recognized that you could send a message to the exchange to poll it. Okay. And to ask them to send you the data before the 2 seconds elapsed. Before
the 2 seconds. Okay. So you have access to price information well before the 2 second elapsed.
Yes. Okay. And I did it through a mechanism that many other people in the industry thought you might be able to use, but there were certain reasons why people, I won't go into them, why people were convinced you couldn't do it.
Okay.
But working at in the particular location and seat,
Right.
we found out that we could use this feature without any reprimand.
Right, right, absolutely. So explain.
Okay, so
Right.
some people might be scared to do it,
Okay.
but we were not afraid. We basically had the blessing. Okay.
Right.
So that project resulted in us dramatically changing our speed and profitability, and solving, at least for a period of time, the problem, until traders from the firm I was at started bragging about it in the bars.
Right, and then everybody knows about it. Then subsequently, they try to juice that same loophole, and then the loophole closes, and then you got to go to a different game.
But actually, they didn't do that because they were still afraid to use it. So they actually got the exchange to close the loophole.
Close the loophole. Okay.
Okay.
So
but I got my first major promotion because I hacked an exchange. That's the way to think about it.
Right, right, right. And wouldn't you say now that that is the market? Would you not say that conceptually that is the market, right? You have all these complex algos now looking for that edge, looking for X, Y, and Z loophole. That loophole exists for a certain period of time. It closes, and they either die or they adapt. Wouldn't you say?
Well, first of all, the exchanges are supposed to recognize when loopholes are being exploited in that manner, and they're supposed to shut them down like immediately.
Okay, but you and I both know that shit doesn't happen. That shit does not happen.
Well, now with certain fines coming out,
yeah,
it's actually very likely that things will change.
Okay, so that's where let's add on an example of good HFT before we continue. Let's add on an example of good HFT, and then we'll talk like future of the markets. I want to get your opinion here.
I'm going to give you a very basic thing.
Give me a good one.
If you have to cheat like that,
yeah,
then it's bad HFT in my book.
Okay, if you have, okay, all right, no doubt. It's a good definition.
It's just simple, right? That's all I'm doing is these guys, and I have a friend, I was going to tell you about this, who, it's really funny. He was talking about certain HFTs' negative reactions to the book Dark Pools.
Okay.
And he's a total insider, and he says, these guys are so angry because it, portrays them as a bunch of guys who are just hacking exchanges, exploiting loopholes. And he says to these, to these HFTs, he's kind of like, kind of in between the two worlds, and he says, that's what you guys do. You know that's what you do. Right? And he started laughing at them because they're so angry about the book's focus on that. And I already told you I'm personally guilty of it myself,
Absolutely.
Let me tell you another anecdote, right? Okay. I actually had become a whistleblower. And that article where I was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal came out.
Right.
And then the individual who collaborated with me on that project sent me an email saying that he'd been driving, he'd left the industry, and he was driving around on his motorcycle, and he got, his life has changed. And he goes, that's exactly this thing you're complaining about. We did that.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I recognized that I had become a whistleblower and hadn't even reflected on my first major promotion as being near identical to the thing I was turning in. I see.
See, it's all coming back to fruition.
I'm saying people don't see.
Right.
They sit there exploiting these loopholes.
Right.
Which, my list of them is getting very long now.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we're just talking. I mean, so far the bats thing is just about the hide and slide order. So that's just one in a list of many here that you have compiled now over the last 3 or 4 years. So
I have a little game I play when I see one fixed. Okay. I basically let friends of mine, people in the industry, I say, hey, check out this filing. Tell me if you can find it. Because it's buried. They bury the fixes in there.
Right.
So, but it's like I'm watching all these things get shut down. We basically had an industry, that you started out trying to find that edge and that loophole, and now it's basically manufacturing loopholes.
Right. Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
That's exactly what this whole case is about, and that's what I called out, and that was a 3.5-year mistake.
Okay, all right. So I want to know, and just like you said, I mean, people are manufacturing these loopholes. You got big HFT firms, and everybody now seems to be coding their strategies. Everybody seems to be working towards that direction. So where's the future of all this? Number one, like, do you actually feel vindicated with the bats? With the bats fine. Number one. And then two, like, what's the future of it? Where is everything going to go? And are the markets really going to change? Or are they just going to continue to get more complex and more complex and more complex?
Yeah, well, okay, do I feel vindicated? I mean, yeah, there's a lot more to go, but now that I recognize that I was not supposed to get this far, it would be completely immature of me to say anything except that this was an amazing result.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah. So
I like how you're very political these days, by the way, Haim. You're very political with your answers. You know that?
Yeah. Well, you learn that at the bank. You learn it at the bank. And now what's going to change? Well, guess what? Nothing's going to change, and everything's going to change. What does that mean? The actual features, the features that are used in what I would argue is an abusive manner, have over the last 5-6 months. Most of them have been effectively disclosed and approved. That's the big deal. Where did industry slip on the banana peel again? I'm a whistleblower. I can't really write comment letters on each of these things explaining how they harm investors. Okay? I can count the number of comment letters on one hand.
Right.
So the industry said, hey, we have no comment on all these, hundreds and hundreds of pages of order type filings.
Right.
That now you know is used to harm investors.
Okay. So here's my question, and Haim, to everybody out there, Haim was working alongside Sang Lucci as well as Bulls in Wall Street to create sort of a better system with better tools and sort of equip the regular day trader, aka me and the rest of you guys watching here, with some of the tools that some of these HFT guys are using. So Haim, my question to you is that, do you not see the use of that if they're going to scrap all these order types anyway eventually? Like, is that eventually where we're going to go?
No. I mean, the industry got so addicted to this stuff that there was no way they could make order types, denote them intrinsically illegal if everybody had been using them in the HFT space for 5 years.
Absolutely. Okay.
Right? That's a political thing. I mean, there's some legalities here, not full disclosure. I mean, there are actual illegal order types. UBS just got hit for an actual illegal order type.
Okay.
But it seems like they're going to be very lenient.
Okay.
What they're basically saying is you can create a snake pit trapdoor under the carpet.
Right.
And you can let people into the house.
Right.
And have them fall into it. But you have to put a sign.
And disclose. You just got to disclose.
There's a snake pit here that could kill you. So you don't get in trouble for creating the snake pit.
Right. Okay. All right.
Completely crucified for not putting the sign up.
Okay. Well, this is what I wanted to know.
That's where it's going.
So yeah. To that point, now what's the future of the industry, so to speak? I mean, right now it's all about volume, right? Whoever's trading the most, we want that volume. We want to make money off that volume with payment for order flow and all this kind of other stuff that's going on in the back end, which retail traders don't even know about it. Still, retail traders are not being passed back their rebates, from places like Fidelity and things like that. So do you see a shift in the industry?
Well, here's what I'll call it. I'm a critic. In every other industry, they're advanced, called scientific industry, right? Think about like cellular phones, right? The PC.
Okay.
Certain types of drugs that were at one point cost prohibitive, right? Everything ends up going completely consumer, and margins going down to nothing and becoming a service industry.
Absolutely, which we're seeing right now with the commission.
Right.
We're seeing that right now with commissions.
Right. Now, in our business, this HFT weaponry
Yes.
has not been used to serve the customer.
Never.
Right? You are being treated better than by Apple.
Yes.
Apple's actually delivering a product to you.
Absolutely.
Right? This industry could be providing you, Lucci, better execution.
Yes.
But it's been much more lucrative for them to be on the other side of your trade.
Absolutely.
Okay? Now, whoever cross-pollinates it, which was our vision from when that happens,
right.
When you realize that the guys in my world
yes.
do not know how to trade without a stacked deck, they don't know at all.
Without a stacked deck. You guys hear that? You guys hear that? These guys
they don't know that edge. I mean, I know what it's like on that side. When that edge is the only thing that makes them confident and aggressive.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
You can be very, very confident and very aggressive when you know you have that type of edge over, right?
Right, absolutely.
On a level playing field.
Okay.
I won't have to talk to these guys again. They can go back to their computing jobs. There's ex-regulators. They can go back. I mean, you realize, you look at the firms and how they're staffed.
Yeah.
I'm very much a proponent of quantitative trading, and I see HFT as the opposite. I see it as like kind of a bunch of technologists, some floor traders,
right,
and and regulators, and market structure guys, and deal guys. It's like those guys really never dominated this space until 2007.
Until 2007, when Reg came out, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly, right? They were second-class citizens in this world.
Absolutely.
And the reality is, in a level playing field, the normal pecking order will come back, and traders and quants, who I will put at the top of the pecking order, will actually be in charge of the market again.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So that you guys heard it first. You guys heard it first. The sort of the hybrid of the two worlds here. And, we still have yet to see somebody really come into the space and take over that part of the world, or sort of be the leader in that part of the world. So that's great, man. All right, so we've already went a little bit over. Haim, let's end this with, what are you working on now these days? And what's in the future for you? Are we still, just doing the speaking engagements and whistleblowing, or are you working on some algos? What are you working on?
Well, I took it's kind of a technology break. I have friend Stu Bailey, who I used to work with I used to be in the supercomputing industry. Right. And I met with him over the summer, and I told him about all the problems. That I was a black box guy, and I tried to enter the trading world, and I start realizing that you guys like the black box, but you're actually trading through horrible user interfaces.
Yes.
Horrible access to data. I mean, your problems are so much worse.
Yeah, we see it
than
now.
just not having a black box.
Yeah, yeah.
And I wasn't ready for that. So I was like, I don't know how I can empower and get these tools to market where these guys can't. They have nothing. So so we're building a new system, and it's based on a computing language that's kicking my ass called Erlang.
Okay.
And that's and I've been spending a lot of time learning this new computing language and this new paradigm.
It's not a derivation of some shit that already exists. Like it's a
25-year-old language that was used primarily for like telecommunications systems.
You're back there learning Sanskrit now, man.
Yeah, exactly. So what this platform is going to allow us to do is, and the way I've kind of pitched it to people in the trading side of the world, is I see it as an open source Bloomberg.
Okay. Okay.
Where you can, on Bloomberg you can build your own apps.
Right.
And there's all these different things. That's what I need. I need something like that to channel.
And there's still a huge barrier on the Bloomberg because that shit still costs what, $2,000 a month type thing, right?
Yeah. So I see this as one of the main issues. Again, we talked about you guys should have. It's really pathetic that your iPhone is more sophisticated than the trading tools you have access to.
Amen, man. Amen,
right?
man.
I was like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? You know, so I can't say I'm going to solve everything. I'm just trying to solve my own problems. But I just so our first application, it's really a simple application, but it's actually built on an Erlang backbone.
Okay.
It's my new research site. I just tweeted it today.
Okay.
I'm going to start putting all of my order type material and other type of market structure stuff is all going to be in this website.
Great.
But it's actually running on an Erlang backbone, and there if you so I encourage people, if you want to if you can deal with it being a little buggy, you go to my website haimbodek.com. There's a little announcement saying early access to DCM research. If you become a user there, maybe half a year from now you'll be able to trade to the thing.
Nice, nice. Okay, so everybody, haimbodek.com, check it out. And let's end this here with a little human aspect here, Haim. You still listening to metal here? You still cranking out the hard rock, man?
Yeah. Yep. I'm
so see, I figured. So his son coming up, right? I figured he was gonna get Drake. I figured he was gonna get Drake to sing at the bar mitzvah. That's what you should do.
No, I've actually been trying very hard to convert my children, but it's just not working. My daughter is a cellist, and I have 2 violinists, and my wife is a ex-music theory from University of Chicago graduate.
Yes.
So
to leave everybody, by the way, with a little story, the whole SL crew, we went over to Haim's place. This was back in, I want to say like 2012, maybe summer of 2012. He had a little barbecue and everything, and his minions, right? His kids, amazing music talent. Your wife put Peter on the piano to play, alongside the 3 kids, and it just had a wonderful medley going on, man. So Haim has a dope place out in Stanford, and now seems to be a lot more relaxed. You seem to be a lot more relaxed than when we met you in 2012. Like, okay, we got to get something going. You seem to be a lot more cool and calmer these days. Am I right?
Yeah, I got some of it out of my system recently.
All right, everybody. Listen, we're going to close it up. Haim is going to come back here for a rated R episode, okay? He told me this already. He said, listen, we got to do PG until, certain things smooth out. And so Haim is going to come back for a rated R episode, which is what I wanted today. So we're gonna air out a bunch of other stuff when he comes back. So Haim, man, thank you very much for coming by. Everybody, check out haimbodek.com, and hopefully, watch for the future here. Watch for the future. Haim's working on a lot of things. Sang Lucci is also working on a lot of things for that same sort of future. So stick around, man. It could get pretty interesting. All right, Haim, take care, man.
Okay, thank you.